we need to talk about everything that has happened in baseball over the last few days. And our first subject, the first thing I want to talk to you guys about is collapses, specifically in September and the playoff / wild card race, because things have changed even since our last show, more than I could have ever imagined, almost as much as it could have possibly changed. Now, you may notice that this isn't a Mets jersey, guys. This is the Detroit Tigers. Wowie, we're in the final week of the Major League season, and that's when the playoff pushes happen. And no amazing playoff takeoff, finish line kick would be complete without the collapse of somebody else. And there's been two very big collapses happening, one a little bit slower than the other, and we're going to talk all about it and the implications of what could possibly happen here in the last 5 days of the season, because, as you well know, the last day of the season is this Sunday, September 28th, which happens to be my son's birthday. That is not relevant. I just thought I'd throw it out there because I love talking about it. That's what happens when you have a kid. All right, let's get into this. Let's get into it. Let's talk first about the old collapse over in the AL. The Detroit Tigers have officially, completely given up first place in the AL Central to the Cleveland Guardians. Now, you guys may be thinking, hey, Cleveland's good every year. I haven't been following super closely, Trevor. Is it really that big of a deal? Is it really that big of a collapse? Well, buckle your seatbelt. This is September 1st of this year, which is 3.5 weeks ago, okay? This is the Central. That's Detroit up there at 80 and 59. They were 10.5 games up on Cleveland. Heck, they were 9 games up on Kansas City. Cleveland wasn't even at second going into this month, okay? Here we are, 23 days later. Oh, by the way, this is now the AL Central. They're tied. A 10.5 game lead has been completely erased in 23 days. In that time, the Guardians are 17 and 5 in that time. During the same period of time, the Tigers are 5 and 14. Now, that's a very good record, and that's a very bad record, okay? But for that to flip that hard, that quickly, just goes to show you that there's no lead safe in the Major Leagues. This is like one of the worst collapses I've ever seen. And as many of these collapses are kind of highlighted by over time, is basically a head-to-head series. There's always a head-to-head series between the two teams at somewhere in there. Always. Every single time. This is what happened this time as well. Now, just before we get into that, I want to highlight this even more. This is overall records now. Okay? Detroit, down here now, has the 6th best record in the AL. They had the best record on September 1st in the league. The best record. And now they have the 6th best record. And that happened in 3 weeks. Okay? So, the big fumble. The moment where this thing took a turn for the, oh God, this is actually happening worse, was on September 16th. The Cleveland Guardians went into Detroit. At that time, they were back. By the way, this is 8 days ago. They were 6.5 games back 8 days ago. The Cleveland Guardians went into Detroit and swept the Tigers, okay? The Tigers, if they had won one of those games, or maybe even 2 of those games, they increased their lead by 1 game, 7.5. That kind of takes the wind out of the sails, okay? They could have won 1 game. They would still have a 5.5 game lead. Instead, the Cleveland Guardians walked out of Detroit down 3.5 games with another meeting to come, which they started yesterday. And you know what happened? They lost. So now they're the Tigers lost. The Cleveland Guardians won again. And I believe that takes them, they win the season series as well. So a tie, they have the tie break. So all hell has broken loose. All hell has broken loose, and things are not good in Detroit. This is up there in modern baseball history. We're talking about the wild card era. This is up there with two of the biggest collapses you guys probably still remember in your lifetimes. The 07 Mets, they were up 7 games with 17 to play, arguably a smaller lead than this has been. And then they went 5-7, ended up tying with the Phillies and then losing on the final day of the season. And the Phillies took the NL East, and the Mets did not make the wild card that year, right? The Mets are also going to be later in this segment, so they're not escaping it this year either, but it could be worse. It could be this, okay? Or you guys might remember the 2011 Boston Red Sox. Remember? Chicken and beer. Remember that? Remember that whole fiasco? Can't imagine what that would be like these days, frankly. But they went 7-20 in September. And they had a 9-game wild card lead. They blew a 9-game wild card lead in 1 month. These guys have blown a 10.5-game lead in 23 days. This has got to be the biggest collapse, especially if it doesn't work out, right? So there's still time. Fortunately, last night they had their ace on the mound. We're going to talk a little bit about what happened in that game on the top of the news, but just know the Tigers didn't win, okay? The Tigers did not win. So where are we at now? Like, if we're a Tiger, what do we see as our options moving forward? So just know, if the Tigers end up losing the division to the Guardians, they have to hope that Houston continues to lose, because not only would they fall out of the division title and no longer get that pennant, they might not make the playoffs. And as someone who is makes his whole living right now on pitching and before on pitching, I really want to see Tarik Skubal in the playoffs, man. And I don't want to be robbed of that. But this story is just too crazy. Like, it's almost like it's a win-win in my mind. I'm not a hardcore fan for either one of these teams, but like, bro, I know what it's like. Okay, I don't know what this feels like, but I know what the looking in the rearview mirror feels like. It is this low level, oh God, happening to where, like, you feel like you don't have any control, and you kind of get outside of the things you need to do every day, because good, bad, or indifferent, you're supposed to be the same. And I'll be honest, that is next to impossible to pull off. It just is, especially in these situations, and especially when nobody will let any of it go, ever. So that is the first one.
FT fam, it's still time for you to check out what bathing suit you're wearing and why it's not Fair Harbor. Can we get a little show and tell from Eric Kratz? Nice.
I mean, unfortunately, you can't even see all the little intricacies. We got sharks, we got patterns, we got waves, we got sailboats. Oh, and they feel super buttery on your skin.
Can you show us the liner so people can understand how it's different? Because I've actually been talking it up. I was just on a vacation.
I got the unique liner too. I got the baby blue, John. Something about it, I don't know. It pops.
Head to fairharborclothing.com/foul20 and use code FOUL20, FOUL20 for 20% off your order. Once again, that's FAIRHARBOR clothing.com/foul20 for 20% off. Make sure you use that promo code FOUL20 so they know FT sent you.
The second, though, it's gotten a little bit better. I wrote this segment before the games yesterday, so it's colored a little bit like, oh God. But some positive stuff has happened for our second possible collapse, and that's the Mets versus, well, it was Cincinnati, but frankly, it's everyone. It's Cincinnati and the Arizona Diamondbacks, because Cincinnati and Arizona are now tied and 1 game behind the Mets. So let's paint this picture a little bit, right? Let's check out these records. Okay, so on this is August 1st. And August 1st, this was the division, the NL East, okay? The Mets were half a game back from Philly, and at this time, they were 5.5 games up on Cincinnati and even more on Arizona for the wild card. So they were very safely in the driver's seat. The wheels had started to fall off, but they weren't gone yet. Okay? They weren't gone yet. So now, and then this was also, so this is September 1st, okay? We go forward a month, and this is when things started to kind of close in, because during that time, as the Mets kind of slowly started to fall back. They were 4 games under 500 in August. Wasn't a great month, but wasn't catastrophic. It wasn't like we still had a 4-game lead here on Cincinnati. Not too bad. Again, this is 23 days ago. But it's starting to tighten up a little bit. Cincinnati hasn't been great in that time either. Really, no one's put a lot of pressure. The other teams were like around 500. So like it's not like another team like the Guardians. It's just like coming for them. They're just kind of trying to hold them off. No one's really in the driver's seat there. Okay? So this is now the NL East. They're now 11 games back. So the Phillies have played a lot better. That's pretty simple. And then this is now the wild card situation. New York Mets are now 1 game up after a big win yesterday, taking down the Cubs, who are a very good team, a team they really needed to take down. But in this time, Cincinnati, in that same time, since August 1st, Cincinnati's 23-24, and Arizona is 24-23. So, like, again, nobody's taking it from them. It feels like the Mets are still in that driver's seat, but just barely. They got a foot in. And they're hoping that it all works out. So, here's kind of the scenarios, okay? Here's how this thing is playing out, and here's what needs to happen one way or the other for a different team to move into these spots, okay? So, here's the interesting thing about the NL. So we have the Mets, we have the Reds, and we have Arizona, okay? Amongst those 3 teams, the Mets and Arizona are 3-3 against each other. So if they tie, and that's assuming that the Reds aren't involved, they're behind them. If those 2 tie, then it would go to how good they are against their divisions. Now, I don't know. That took some research, and we're not going to worry about that yet. But it would go to how well did you play against your divisions. And as we know, I'd say the NL West is probably a little bit more competitive, but then again, they have the Rockies. So who knows? It might be close, okay? Kind of a weird tiebreaker. I don't really like that. I think it should be like against each other's divisions before. There's like 10 other options they could have done for that, but they could have done a coin. I would have taken a coin flip over that. I don't like that at all. But that's what the tiebreaker would go to step 2, okay? The Reds have the season series against both the Mets and Arizona. So if it's a 3-way tie, the Reds go. So, Arizona would probably be helped out by a tie with the Mets, but Arizona cannot tie with Cincinnati. What they need to do, both Arizona and the Mets have to pass Cincinnati. Tying with them is not an option. The Mets would prefer to not have it come down to the records in division. Again, I don't know what that is. That might not be great either. So there's a real chance that the Mets just can't tie with anybody. They have to win it all right. I think that's probably what's going to happen here. So the Mets have to win this thing outright, and they're up 1 game. I don't know if that's going to happen. So here's what's left for the Mets. Mets take game 1 from the Cubs, so they got 2 more against the Cubs, and then they got 2 more against the Cubs, and then they end against the Marlins in Miami. So they're on the road the whole time. Tough. Miami is one of those thorn in the side type of teams that they're not going to give up. They're only 3 games under 500. They're playing good ball, and they love to be spoiler. That is not who the Mets want to play, especially because they dropped 2 or 3 recently at home against them. So there's a really good team, a team that's supposedly not as good, but is finishing strong in front of them. Arizona probably has the toughest road, as they have the Dodgers, and then they have the Padres. Though they have the Dodgers at home, and then they have Padres on the road. Both teams that, yes, they're very good, but they're also firmly in the playoffs and might rest people. That could go either way. We'll see how motivated these best teams are at the end of the season. It's always kind of a crapshoot, but Arizona's got a tough road forward as well. And the Reds took on the Pirates. They lost game 1. I don't know if they get Skeens again, but if they do, not great. And then they end with the Brewers, who has the best record in the league. So none of these teams, they're all playing at least one really good team. None of these teams have an easy way forward. But if I had to say, the Reds probably have the best option or the best ease of schedule to at least get a tie, and that's not looking good for the Mets. So the Mets have to win all their games. They just have to get in. That's just what has to happen. There's also some other interesting stuff in this conversation, right? There's some other scenarios that we should touch on because it's entirely possible. For example, Every team we just mentioned, they could lose out and the Marlins could win. If every other team loses out and the Marlins win all their games and sweep the Mets in the season, they would get in. They're theoretically within striking distance. They could do that. That would be nuts. I don't think that's going to happen. But, Guardians think anything can happen, so maybe it could. Also, what happens if Cleveland pulls away from Detroit? Detroit drops the game tonight. We have Flaherty versus Bybee. That's a great matchup. I would highly recommend you watching that. What happens then with them in Houston? Could Detroit fall out of the playoffs? Not only do I think it's possible, it's feeling pretty inevitable at this point, and I really hope they can pull the e-brake on this thing. The feeling in that clubhouse, it's almost like you can't relax for like a month. You're seeing the house fall down around you, but you can't move. You can only, as a reliever, for example, you can only take the ball when they give it to you and then just hope it isn't your fault if you lose. That's a real way of thinking. You really think about that in the playoffs too, just like, hey, give me the ball, get my one inning done, and then just do the thing that you do well, and that's it. But as a reliever that wants to really help things turn around, you're only a defensive player, so it's on the position players. And we're in September. Everyone's exhausted. It's exhausted, and you're supposed to get yourself up without getting that break between the playoffs and whatever, or that relief of being like, okay, let's reset, let's go. We know where we're going. We know who we're playing. Let's now do this thing. That usually is a good reset. These guys are running on fumes. Everybody is, the Guardians included. But sometimes you just need some energy from somewhere. And man, is it hard. It is. It feels like you lost 200 games, man. It is so hard. So I feel for you guys out there. I was listening to Jason Benetti on the broadcast, just like, well, we just got to win more games. I'm like, well said, Jason. Well said. So here's my predictions for how this thing plays out. I think the Mets hold on for that seed, and they keep ahead by one game. That's what I think is going to happen. I think they're just going to hold on. Last night made me believe the comeback and then Alvarez's big hit after he was robbed earlier that week. I think I'm choosing to believe, and I just think that we need one of these collapses not to happen. I think the Guardians take the Central, and the Tigers barely squeak into the 6th seed because they edge out Houston. But I think they're going to be a 6th seed. I think they're going to barely hold on, and it's who knows what will happen. But this is me probably just saying, give me Tarek Skubal in a playoff series, please. And then the Mariners will get the 2 seed at that point. Because the Mariners are hot. They're hot. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. But man, collapses are nuts, man. This is the craziest thing I've ever seen. But I can't lie. I am sitting there waiting with bated breath. I watched the end of the game yesterday, and I was just like, I do not know how this is humanly possible.